Well, we appreciate all of you being here. And it's been a rich dialogue, and the end of it has been good because we have to discuss these issues. We have to talk them through. And I appreciate it really in terms of the kind of stark criticisms that are made of the U.S. government. But as my dear friend Bob Law would often say on the radio, therefore. I mean, you also have to go to the therefore. I mean, it's not news to me, the predatory nature of the U.S. capitalism. And by the way, you know, we can all be the greatest revolutionaries of all time. I would profess to you that there is no such thing, by the way, of a contradictionless revolution in the middle of a contradiction. There will be compromises. There will be nuance. There is subtlety in all of these struggles. The main thing is to always have your eyes on where it is that you need to go. We are not powerless in the United States of America to help influence and steer what the nature of U.S. policy should be. I refuse to concede that. Now, it may not be perfect, but that is our task. Because otherwise, I am continuing to engage in the analysis of what the nature of it is. The question is, what will be the nature of the struggle? In this regard, you know, again, what has been outlined, that there is a process in Haiti, and I've been working in Haiti again since 1995, and I have never seen something as energetic and as visionary that is what is unfolding now. So what is required is we need our support. And I'm glad that we have somebody, and I may disagree with him on some things, but on Haiti, I'm glad that Congressman Meeks is standing firm in terms of defending Haiti, standing firm in terms of pushing for support for the Montana Accord process and what it is laying out. Now, I want to really close because I know we have our sisters and brothers who are watching virtually, who are part of the stream. Because now the Haiti Support Project, Joe Baptiste, and you can recall, because every time we've had a State of the Black World Conference, and you know, we'd always have a special session on Haiti, always. Haiti is near and dear to my heart. We owe a debt to Haiti. The United States of America owes a debt to Haiti. And the debt that, in fact, there was someone who I was talking to the other day, and they were asking me, they said, are you Haitian or what? I said, no. But I said, but as an African American, all people of African descent owe a debt to Haiti. I wrote about that. I will reemphasize that tonight. Because in this period that we're in now, we certainly in the Haiti Support Project are trying to recommit ourselves to working very closely to move through this period so that the Haitian Revolution can finally be finalized. And Johnny hit on something that we also have to contextualize, and it is good that CARICOM is involved. I love a lot of the leaders in CARICOM. In fact, at this very church, we brought one of the most progressive leaders in the Caribbean today. They call him Comrade Ralph. He is the leader of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez. We brought him to this very, very church for discussion of the nature of democracy and development, or the status of it in the world. And we brought with him Pedro Pierce, the former president and prime minister of Cape Verde, who was a commander for Amilcar Cabral. So we owe a debt, because Haiti shattered the myth of white supremacy when it was being propagated at a time when black folk were supposed to be, and were to some degree because of imperialism, we're on our knees. But we all know that Haiti has been stigmatized and marginalized ever since that happened. It has never, ever been given an opportunity to rise and to fulfill itself. The point I was about to make is, it is great that Gonzalez is involved. It's great that all the Caribbean nations are involved. But what people really don't need to really clue in on is that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is 100,000 people. There's a new leader in Grenada that we're now also working with 45 years after the Grenada Revolution was launched. It was also crushed. And Don Rojas, who's our Director of Communications and International Relations with IBW, was the press secretary for Maurice Bishop. we're now seeing a new renewal of parts of that vision in the person of Prime Minister Decon Mitchell. So that there is a rebirth. Things are rising again in Grenada, but Grenada is 100,000 people. Haiti is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 million people. So if you understand what that means, is when Haiti is finished, it steps out and is unleashed, you're talking about a global power in Haiti. So CARICOM will do its job. It will do its duty. The question is, we have to continue to be focused in that regard. I'm glad it was referenced the fact that not only was Haiti marginalized and stigmatized, it had to pay reparations back to France and 100 million francs, and did not finish that until well into the 20th century, the invasion that took place. But Haiti was also important to black people, African Americans in this country. It was also important because when Haiti rose up and rebelled, it was heard by Denmark Vesey. It was heard by Nat Turner. They heard about the Haitian Revolution before there was Instagram and email and any of these platforms. They heard the drumbeat of what had happened, and they were inspired by it. And it's important to note that when the invasion took place, it was the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People under the leadership of Walter White who took up the charge, oppressing the U.S. government. For years, it was one of the top agendas of the NAACP under Walter White. Why? In part because they knew that if Haiti could be independent at a time when black people were suffering under Southern apartheid and de facto segregation in the North, Haiti was the example that yes, black people can govern themselves. Black people can, in fact, be in control of their own destiny. So there's been this relationship between African Americans and between Haitian Americans, which is why we, in fact, built the Haiti Support Project to continue to build out that relationship. And so when we're in this moment now, in this moment of crisis, because Haiti still is a young democracy, we've come again to proclaim that there may be contradictions, there may be difficulties. No movement that I've ever been associated with has not had its internal or external contradictions. They all do. But you make choices in terms of what is the best option for you at any moment in history. And I'm here to tell you that I've never ever seen a crisis as deep, but I've never ever seen a movement more promising than the Montana Accord movement. And I say that really as a political scientist as well, because one of the issues, and the brother raised it, about the question of democracy. We do not need to adopt Western-style democracy in our nations. I'm not a proponent of authoritarianism or dictatorship, nor do I really believe that we ought to rely on the United States or anyone else but our own resources at the end of the day. I don't really want to choose between the lesser of evils in that regard. I don't want to really have to depend on someone who is brutalizing, murdering, and killing people, that is in fact our ally, either in the United States or elsewhere. We have the capacity in terms of organizing Africa, the Caribbean, and we in the United States to become our own independent Pan-Africanist progressive bloc. That's what we have the ability to do. That's on our agenda. But it's not easy. It won't just sort of miraculously occur, because you're right. At every instance, there are those who will intervene to try to block us from achieving that objective. That's their business. That's what they're supposed to do. The question is not what they are doing, what are we going to do? And that means we have to be about creating operational unity, creating these umbrellas where we're working together. And one of the things that does not work well, it seems to me, in the Pan-African world, in Africa or anywhere, is when you have winner-take-all systems. So if you're in Nigeria, for example, where you have the Igbo and the Yoruba and the various groups there, if one group wins and they take all, then you know that is a built-in prescription for tension. In fact, the Berlin crisis, the Berlin conference, built it in by carving up these nations in ways and mixing nations up and ethnic groups up in a way that help build conflict. One of the problems in Haiti is these winner-take-all systems. And it creates tension and it creates conflict. Kenya is one of the nations that now has moved away from that to begin to talk about proportional representation and people, including people. We must have governments and movements of national inclusion, where we include people as opposed to exclude them. Winner take all, we have to move away from that and create our own paradigms of possibilities. And in that regard, the Montana Accord movement has recognized that. They've also recognized, as they used to say, that really the power is in the people. And in that regard, again, elections don't matter. Elections don't equal democracy. It is participation, tapping the wisdom, tapping the strength. And I got to tell you, if you're talking about Haiti, there's a guy named Patrick Lee. I think he was the head of security for President John Bertrand Aristide. At one moment, in a moment of crisis, he yelled out, he said, "You will never get to the bottom of the Haitian people." By that he meant there is a depth of resistance and resilience that is one of the most remarkable that you will see anywhere in the world. This is the basis of why, in fact, Napoleon Bonaparte was sent back, packing back to France. I'm sure they didn't show that in the movie. I haven't seen it, but I bet you that's not in the movie because they don't want to show that part, right? And so what I'm saying is that we urge people to be patient. We urge people to study. We urge people to listen. And yes, offer your critique. But we're asking people in the African American community and the Haitian community to come together around a process, not an individual, not just an organization, but a process and a plan, or a plan and a process that can really lead to something other than these little short, fake elections. And there is going to be a need for resources. Our dear friend Lionel Jean-Baptiste has put together what he calls a Toussaint Louverture. It's almost equivalent to a Marshall Plan to provide massive resources for Haiti. Because I also believe, and we're talking about this discussion, somebody talked about it. The gang folk, they're our people too. And this idea of going in with guns blazing is not the way to do it. We need to be talking because there are large numbers of people who don't have jobs, young men and women who don't have jobs. We need to be talking about how to provide jobs. Maybe it's a jobs corps. Maybe it's a jobs training program. Maybe it fits into the broader economy. We do not need a solution where we're just talking about a military solution. We're talking about a broader social justice agenda. But at the end of the day, people will have to be incentivized to put down their guns. Instead of, in fact, this guy, Barbecue, who is quoting Malcolm, he needs to stop quoting Malcolm and acting like Malcolm. Because then you act like Malcolm, who had his own little record of doing some stuff. He transformed himself from being never really any serious stuff, but he had a little criminal record, really. But he transformed himself from being a little petty hoodlum in the community to being one of the greatest liberators that we've ever known. So Barbecue, you need to do a different kind of barbecue. You know what I mean? You need to stop quoting Malcolm and act like Malcolm. And we need to take that message to all the gangs and bring them in. But we have to bring them in on the right conditions in terms of moving this process forward. So sisters and brothers and friends, big challenge. Watch the news because danger is there. And as Johnny has said in an elaborate answer, when you are faced with the situation they're faced with now, there has to be some way of also providing security. What I understand the Montana Accord has said over and over again is, the question is, we do not need someone else to impose that security. We need to make the decision of, if we need security, what kind of security do we need? Who should provide it? On what terms? That's respecting the sovereignty. But that there's a need for a force to, in fact, do security, there is absolutely no question about that. Anything beyond that is being almost like, people on the phone are dying and bleeding on the streets. They are taking, in fact, the law into their own hands, which is not a good prescription over the long haul, but people will do whatever is necessary to survive. We saw on the news where 14 gang members were rounded up and they were summarily executed. That's how desperate people are. And I can theoretically say, they shouldn't do that. They did what the hell they felt they had to do to survive. I don't agree with it. But in desperate times, they had to do what was necessary. So we need to deal with this idea that there has to be security. I don't even hesitate. I don't even stumble on it. There has to be some security. The question is on what terms and what basis. And by the way, we need to find out and be able to deal with our Pan-African world in terms of Africa and the Caribbean, so that these problems, we are solving them ourselves as opposed to calling the Canadians and the French in. We should be able to solve them ourselves. But we should not then turn on each other when they're solved. And yeah, that may mean that Kenya is going to get some resources and to pay for the mission, and they may use it in some other ways and whatnot. But I think the motives are not anterior motives. I think their instinct is right. But they can't have an instinct that's out of sync with the people on the ground. The people on the ground have to make that final decision. And they're capable of doing that. And they're willing to do that. So sisters and brothers, at this critical moment, there's great pain, but there's also great promise. And so we ask you to be about the business of studying about the Montana Accord. For those of you who are watching on the live stream, we are also asking you to support the Haiti Support Project, because we took on this mission. There's no foundations up in here funding this. And when the critical moment arose and I learned about it, we said we have to, as IBW, get involved in this process. We have to get it done on guts and faith. And that faith is that when we appeal to the people will be supportive. So for those who are listening, we're asking you to go to the website, ibw21.org. There's a special link. We have created a Haiti crisis fund to aid and assist us to do what we need to do in this period. Because like we used to say in the old days, freedom ain't free. This work ain't free. It costs. It costs in order to have this venue this evening. We even took space upstairs because we thought there might be overflow. We had to pay for that, and we should have to pay for it. Black churches and black institutions, they don't run on our well wishes. They run because there are resources that have to be paid. So we had an empty space upstairs that was there just in case, because we did not want to turn anybody away because of the fire code and whatnot. But that's literally significant resources that we did not have. So we're asking our friends and brothers and sisters who are watching in, go to the website and, in fact, contribute. And contribute heavily if you can. And on the way out, or we may ask you in the hallway, if anybody here who wants to make a contribution, we're not going to make as heavy appeal as we would have. We would appreciate you doing so as you leave, or we'll have an envelope there for you. We couldn't even get the right envelopes done. We got the envelopes from the old days, from the earthquake days, because we raised $500,000. The Haiti Support Project raised $500,000 during the earthquake with the blessing and support of our allies and so forth. So we're going to need that support again. But the bottom line is to be hopeful. It is a very difficult period, but we know that we as African people have the capacity to overcome anything. And what we heard today when we had our briefing, we had sisters and brothers saying, we're catching hell on the ground, but we ain't going to turn around. And those sisters were literally concerned about their lives. Concerned about their lives, but they said, we're not giving up. We're not turning around. So we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you participating.